Hey everybody, it's Natalie Nixon, and in another minute we are going to be talking, I am going to be talking with Eve Rodsky about wonder and dreaming. So bear with me as I get Eve to join us. Hello, hey Eve. Um, let me, Eve, can you hear me? Hi,
Hi.
Eve.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I can't see you.
I can't see you either. It says connecting, connecting, connecting.
Oh, okay, good.
Hold on.
You'll
Hopefully
be
it'll
up in a sec.
connect. Yeah, let me. All the tech problems, Natalie. Oh, here we go.
There you
Yay.
go.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
So good to see you.
Good to see you too. I'm a woman of a certain age, so I'll be going back and forth between my specs, my
Oh my
readers.
gosh. Yeah. I will say that this week, the time difference, I
I
don't know, like
know.
California, we voted. Didn't we all? I don't know if anyone on here is in California, but didn't we vote to get rid of daylight savings time?
I don't
Um,
remember that.
I saw a funny meme that says like, I hope freaking daylight savings was saved because
Yeah,
it definitely has not been good for me. But I
me
felt
neither.
like
I
it.
was so tired on Monday and didn't realize until like 1 in the afternoon on Sunday that we were springing ahead. So, oh
Yeah,
well.
and then and I my circadian rhythms are your I've been doing a lot of research on circadian rhythms
Nice.
for one of my day job my clients because as you know my day job is I'm a mediator and a lawyer and I work for families that look like the HBO show Succession. And I like to say everyone should feel bad for me, but what I do for those families, right? And why I think you and I have such complementary work is I bring grace and humor and generosity to these families' most complex financial and organizational decisions. But part of it is values and how to be creative with their philanthropy. And so I look a lot at creativity. So that's why I sought you out. And
Well,
then
let's first of all
so excited.
let's just reset and say, hey everybody, thanks so much. I'm Natalie, joined with Eve Rodsky and Natalie Nixon, and Eve and I thought it would be a smashing idea just do a couple of experiments and have some dialogue and conversation about wonder and rigor. And today, just for 30 minutes, we want to talk about dreaming. But Eve, would you share how we first met?
Oh, I can't. I'm so excited to talk about dreaming. Well, we first met because actually I'd read your book. And then I got, and I, you see it's all like annotated.
Thank
Um,
you. High
and
praise.
yeah, I love my post-its. So I'll take the post-it off so I can show the title, The Creativity Leap. Um, and I was fascinating. At first, there's two reasons. I reached out to you because I had also seen you speak at a female quotient event.
Yes, that's right.
Um, and so I wanted to interview you as an expert for the second book I'm writing on what I call unicorn space, right? The like the mythical equine space for women to do creative things is often considered still very subversive, especially if it's not paid. And
Yes.
then I also was interested in your career. And so I know you want to ask me some questions, but I would ask you that question because I think it's so amazing because you have such an interesting title or such at least when I was reading about you and you're a creativity strategist or at least that's one of your titles. I was just wondering how did you get to have a career like that? Because doesn't everybody want to be a creativity strategist?
Well, duh, everyone should be a creativity strategist. But so I actually have another anecdote for your book about the unicorn space. Did I get the title right? The unicorn space?
Yes, yes, yes.
Which is going to be related to why I call myself a creativity strategist, which syncs really well to dreaming. I was a professor for 16 years and I loved it until I didn't anymore one day. And I had my first world existential crisis. Woe is me. I don't think I want to be an academic anymore. What's next? And I'm oversimplifying it now, but it was about a year of internal work to really dream audaciously. And one of the things I did, which I actually have my clients who I coach do, is I created what I now call a loathe love audit. And I had a piece of paper and I drew a line down the center. And on the left, I wrote everything I loathed, and I mean like despised about my work, like committee meetings, grading,
tenure, grading,
all that
like,
crap.
You know, crazy, you know, one of those entitled students that,
Exactly.
You know, yeah.
All that went on the left. And then on the right, I wrote everything that I just loved, adored about my work, that got me out of the bed in the morning. And when I zoomed out of that, after several like 10x crying spells and like you know, John, my husband, would talk me down from my tower, when I zoomed out, I realized, hang on, I could still do stuff aligned with everything on the love side, but it's not called a professor. So then what is it called?
So what was the love side? Can you give me some examples of what was on the love side of the professorship? Because a love loathe audit. I mean, if anybody gets anything out of today, that is
do it.
It is amazing. It is. I did it actually after we talked our first interview, and it was really. It's very cathartic.
It's therapeutic, right?
You love. Yeah.
It's therapeutic and it's rigorous because it forces you to say out loud on the page what's not working, what is working.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff that was working for me as a professor were my students, where I love to learn. I'm a nerd. So I love getting paid to learn shit. Like that to me, like, please more. Yes, like to read and to write up stuff. Like that part I loved. I loved the travel that I was doing in my work. I loved the relative flexibility. Although now as an entrepreneur, I feel like I have so much, even much more flexibility than I did even as an academic. So those were the things that were on my love side. And then once I landed on this job title of creativity strategist, Eve, and this is, of course, pre-COVID. So I would be thinking about showing up at a conference or at a meeting and having to say, hi, I'm Natalie Nixon. I'm a creativity strategist. And it totally, it wouldn't come out, it wouldn't flow. And I would stand in front of my bathroom mirror and practice, hi, I'm a creativity strategist, over and over until many months later it finally started to flow. But that's how dreams come alive, right?
And do people, I just have a question. Do people get scared sometimes when they hear that? Especially if you come into a company because they say, I'm not creative. Because a lot of times when I wanted to interview people for my second book, it's called Unicorn Space. It's about sort of that happiness, meaning, identity stuff that women go through. And I remember I reached out to one man who writes articles around knee surgery. And I said, you know, you're super creative because you created this whole new way of knee surgery. He's like, no, I'm left brain. Like, I don't know, have anything to do with creativity. But I was like, no, you are creative because you created a whole new way to do knee surgery, right? And so you obviously had to dream big. You had to know things were, and we're talking today about dreaming, and I'm excited for our next session where we'll talk about rigor. But I wonder if that happens to you too.
Don't you love how nothing bad ever follows the phrase, I wonder? Like you just said,
yeah,
I wonder. I interrupted you. I wonder.
No, I love that. But yeah, so I wonder if, does that ever happen to you where people get scared of the word?
Yeah. And I think people get scared of the word. First of all, people are like, what is that? What is a creativity strategist? Also, sometimes people will call me a creative strategist. And I'm like, actually, I'm not a creative strategist. I am a creativity strategist. Like both words.
Like, the word here is creativity.
Exactly. Both words matter. So yes. And I think that the fear that a lot of us have when we hear the word creativity, is that it's been drummed out of us. We all as little people, as children, you look at your own kids. You know, my friend and colleague Bob Schwartz used to be the head of design for GE Healthcare. He says, give any person 4 chairs and a blanket. What do? Right? You create a fort, a little house, whatever, right? So we have it in us. It's been drummed out of us. We've also ghettoized it in the arts, which isn't fair to artists, not beneficial to our society at large. So yes, a lot of but it's a great conversation starter, right? It's a great way to start a conversation about what that is and what might that mean in your own world, in your own work.
Right. And I guess I'd ask everybody out here, right? Because Natalie, you know, when I did my love loathe audit, and so many of the exercises, again, in your book, The Creativity Leap, it really was, it really made me, again, continue to expound on the thesis, because I think we have, again, very similar philosophies that anybody can be creative. Like you said, that it's all been in us.
Yes.
But that we've lost our ability to dream. And I think I'm so excited we're talking about the wonder side, because what I found in my work is a big hurdle to dreaming. And then I'd love to hear what you see, but a big hurdle to dreaming, especially for women in midlife, is this idea that our milestones have passed us. So what I hear from so many women, they say to me, I did what society told me was supposed to make me happy, right? I have the 2.5 kids. I have a neighborhood with good schools. You know, obviously I shouldn't feel bad. I have a lot of privilege. I have all the things I thought I'd want, but I'm still really sad, you know, or I don't know what my identity is for me. And that idea of when I would say, well, what makes you you? It was a really hard question for people to answer. And so then I changed that question, but that's what I started with. And so I wonder, again, back to wonder, do you think that society's existential goals for us, whether it's in America, our worshiping of wealth, our ideal worker sitting, you know, for 12 hours in a seat, does that hinder creativity?
Yes. And I just want to remind everyone that the woman I'm talking to, Eve Rodsky, is the author of this book, Fear Play, which I read promptly after meeting Eve. And as you guys can already hear, Eve is a generous populator of questions, of really good, juicy questions, which I think is where all good creativity comes from. And what you did in this book, Fair Play, Eve, by making the invisible work of women visible in plain sight and democratize that work, like share it out evenly. Yeah, there is some strange gender silencing that happens for us as women, where we edit ourselves, we curtail ourselves. And I'll tell a short story about where this was striking to me in high school, because I was an overachiever. My ass had no business being in the hard type of physics class. I should have taken physics for the world, but I took math physics, which I should not have been in that class, but I took it. And I worked my behind off to get a B+. Anyway, I'm in that class, and I would hesitate and make sure I triple checked my work before I would inch up my hand to answer a question. And meanwhile, the boys in the back of the class would yell out an answer and be loud and wrong. And
loud and wrong.
And the world didn't come to an end. The teacher was a great teacher, Mr. Feldman. The teacher, Alan Feldman, I think was his name. The teacher would say, actually, that's not what I was looking for, but let's think through what would happen if we did do what you just said. And let's now explore where I'm trying to get you to go, right? I actually learned a lot from boys being loud and wrong to help me acquire the courage as a woman, as an emerging woman, to be a little bit bolder and louder with my thoughts. I also will say, as a woman of color, as an African-American woman, where I am often even more one of a handful in a room. Don't underestimate that word courage. The courage it takes to speak up, to go from a whisper to a really pointed statement or question, and to own that space. But it's learned behavior, guys and women, gals. It's learned behavior, and it takes self-reflection and sometimes making this stuff very visible to question it, and then to say, what might happen if I behaved a different way? If I just inched my way out and tried, and then realizing, yeah, the world does not come to a halt if I'm wrong, or if people then choose to trample over me anyway, I'll raise it again, or maybe not, right? But it's baby
I
steps.
love that. Well, I'm just wondering, should we get shirts that say Wonder and Rigor on them, which is your construct that I love so much, and also maybe that front says Wonder and Rigor, and the back just says Loud and Wrong, because
yes,
I think that's
I love
really
that.
interesting. I mean, maybe that's a great article I would love to read from you, because I think Loud and Wrong is a really, it feels even subversive to say out loud, right?
Yep.
That I would be loud and wrong, right? Because God forbid I'm loud and use my voice.
Right.
I better be right.
Yes.
So it's interesting that we talked about that. But I think for dreaming, for curiosity, like you said, a lot of times that requires courage.
Big time.
And I think that's what I've been finding as I've been writing about creativity. There's been 3 lack of courages that seem to keep coming up.
What are they? You said 3?
Yeah, the lack of courage, or the pushing through. It's been interesting. Are the permission to be unavailable. So the courage to say that I deserve to be unavailable from my roles as a parent, a partner, a professional. Right. Boundaries, 100%. And I would love for you to reframe it as you see it. The next thing I hear is I don't feel permission to have the courage to really address my guilt and shame for when I do these things. And then the last courage, or the perceived lack of it, is the courage to use your voice. To say to your employer, I need to leave at 5 o'clock for my mixology class. I need to leave at 5 p.m. to invest in my creativity. So those are the 3 things that I've been seeing as courage hurdles for creativity, which is the permission to be unavailable, the permission to somehow burn guilt and shame, and that idea of how do you use your voice. So I'd love for you to reflect on that too.
So first of all, I love how you framed it as courage hurdles. I love that visual. And also because that points out kind of the kinesthetic energy and effort we must dredge up to scale those hurdles. But what comes to mind in each of those 3, I gotta put my readers back on, between like setting boundaries and like saying, this is when I'm available, and the permission to ask to be vulnerable, my words, not yours, and having voice. For me, what I'm hearing in all 3 of these is advocacy, and being able to advocate for ourselves. And as a nerd, I love etymology, and I love that the root meaning of the word advocacy, ad voca, right? It's about having voice. It's about propelling forward with voice. And it's interesting, Eve, that I
love that. I need to write that down.
Write it down.
I never think about, even though I ran an organization called Advocates for Children, and I'm an advocate as a lawyer, I never thought of advoca. I never really thought of where the etymology of that word came from.
It's
and
about
I don't know if anybody
voice.
here has either, so I really appreciate that.
It's about voice, and what's interesting, what you were hearing over and over was this word permission. But like, why? Why do we need to be invited in constantly, and to wait? And there's a time and place for that. And also, there has to be a moment when we advocate for ourselves. And I have struggled with that, because I work in a space, the innovation and creativity space, where there aren't a lot of people who look like me, who are thought leaders in that space. And I have felt awkward sometimes to advocate for myself and for the work that I do. Many other people also advocate for me. But I find myself needing to do that, and it feels awkward. It feels like, oh, should I say that? but you know, it gets a little better over time. And if we're looking at this through a gender lens, there's some blush on my fingertip. But if we look at this from a gender lens, men don't. You know, I learned so much from John, my husband, who, you know, my pillow talk is negotiating for yourself. He does executive comp work as an attorney. And I remember when I was having this existential crisis, and should I leave academia, and how should I leave, and this program I had built. And when I was on that precipice, he said, make them tell you no. Put together a proposal about what your needs are, what you're asking for. He himself is always confounded, but he sees a gender divide constantly in his work between what men have no problem asking for and what women, it doesn't even occur to them. He's like, you should be 5x what you put out there, right? So our teachers are everywhere. And we need to advocate for ourselves, is what I get from your courage hurdles. I love that.
Yeah, courage hurdles. That's new from today. But does that mean, like, so I guess when it comes down to dreaming, what I want to ask you, because I guess it'll be really nice segue to our next conversation too. And again, I know we're both talking about our books, but this is Natalie's, one of my favorite, The Creativity Leap.
And this is Eve's, fair play.
And I think what you do so well is you have this framework, right, of wonder and rigor. So today we're talking about the wonder side and sort of those hurdles to the big dreams, whether those are existential milestones, whether those are the courage hurdles that maybe have a gendered lens to them, or as you said, a race lens to them if you're one in a room. And then I guess our leap to the rigor is understanding that, you know, the idea of dreaming big, right? So the big, hairy, audacious goal, that big goal, you know, how does it, in your mind, how does it go from being that, moving from just an unfulfilled dream to something that actually becomes a creative reality?
I think it all starts with the questions we ask. And one of my favorite prefixes for good questions is what if. And, you know, like tying a loop back to an early part of our conversation, when I did my love audit, I gave myself permission to take a look at all of those things that were real for me in a structure that was no longer working for me, and ask myself, what if I could do those things? I could feel this way, but it's not in this current structure. And what if it's a structure that I design, that I make up? And even as I'm saying this right now, I'm feeling the heart flutter and the butterflies, and there's a physical reaction that I'm having, I'm embodying. And we have to pay attention to those feelings when we start to get excited, when we start to get scintillated. Our bodies tell us the direction to go, and that's part of the intuition piece that I think is so important with creativity as well. We must listen to that. But for me, I believe it starts with asking what if, which is that it opens the gateway to giving yourself permission, to wondering out loud. And then, so we're going to be talking about that next, about how do you implement. We'll be talking about that next Thursday, I think. Look at the link in my bio, and we'll post all of that. But Eve, I have a question for you, because with your next book, which is about unicorn space, how did you dream that up? And was there a what if question that you posed to yourself that got you from, fair play, which is really, developing a system, to this dream? I mean, it's a dreamy visual, this unicorn. So how did you transition? What did you dream up? What was the impetus for that dream to get you to unicorn space?
That's such a good question. I think I'm also someone who doesn't consider myself creative because I was trained as a lawyer, and I really, if I could have the word rigor tattooed on me, that's the side I resonate more with, the idea of rigor. But the creativity for me started with trying to understand what was happening to women, because I just wanted to write the system, Natalie, right? Like I wanted to do like a Cards Against Humanity where I was like, this worked for me and my partner. I beta tested people that mirror the US Census, like here world, like, you know, open source it, use it, have conversations based on the fair play cards to bring some more domestic balance in your life. But what I couldn't ignore, because I ended up with, you know, I have thousands of data points now in terms of interviews, but by then it was 250 men and women that I were tracking, not just hetero cisgender either, and different socioeconomic classes. I mean, self-identified, because I didn't look at their tax returns, but identified as working class all the way up to the 1%. And this idea of identity loss, right? This idea that I have no more milestones left, that I did everything, that society had let women down, that somehow we were sold this bill of goods that didn't come to fruition, that somehow a child was going to make us happier, that somehow a man was going to make us happier, somehow clothes were going to make us happier, somehow losing 10 pounds was going to make us happier. And then watching all of these unfulfilled dreams and sort of resentment around that. And so I couldn't get away from that. And I didn't want to write about that. But what I kept seeing, the pattern was watching people who weren't that way. So there was a woman who told me that she was an object at rest. And so all she needed, Natalie, her what if is, what if I can get into motion? Because I love her what if question. And so now she's 68 and she's the #1 race car driver for cross country races across the world. And she's about to race in Antarctica, the last continent. And all it was a what if question to ask herself, well, what if I entered at 59 a race in Mexico that took me in a race car all throughout Mexico? You know, I mean, it's not like we all have to get that intense, but I do think that that was her. And I started to see all these other women that were reinventing themselves in midlife.
Yes.
Based on your what if question. And so that's made me feel like I wanted to write this book, because it was the inspiration that kept me going. It became the why for fair play. Like, what's the point of getting more time back, Natalie, if you're just going to use it to try to lose another 5 pounds, right?
Yeah. Now what? What's next?
Now what?
Right.
What's next? So that was the question I asked. And so it became a look at what I call, not me, but what the literature calls eudaimonia.
How do you spell that?
I don't even know, but that's your
eudaimonia. Okay, that's cool.
You need to come back and tell me what the root word of that is.
I will. I'm going to figure this out.
It's like EUDAMONIA or something. But eudaimonia is the opposite of hedonistic well-being, and it's linked to a lot of important mental health outcomes around purpose and meaning in life. And so I started to try to understand eudaimonia, and what I realized about it is often it's active pursuits. So this idea, right, that you can eat a pie, which I've been doing a lot during the pandemic.
Me too.
It's not going to feel the same as baking a pie.
Okay.
You can read a book, which is, again, amazing self-care. Doesn't feel the same as writing a book. And
no, it doesn't.
That's what I explore in Unicorn Space.
Awesome. I love that story of this woman in her 60s whose what if is about, like, she takes it to the next level about really going into motion. So I know what kind of an astounding researcher you are, so I'm sure you have like tons of those anecdotes. That's really amazing. We have only I don't know, like 2 minutes or so, so I just want to be mindful of everyone's time. I want to end on maybe us sharing. And I'm sorry. First of all, thank you everyone who joined. I'm sorry I'm not great at IG Live. I don't know how to quickly capture. If maybe someone else has a question, if I can capture your question, if you want to add in a question to the comment, and we'll try to get to it real quick. But really quickly, Eve, and then I'll share my answer. where do you do your best dreaming?
Such a great question. Honestly, I know there's so much research now about how important it is to have diffused thinking,
Yes.
as opposed to deep focused thinking. And 100% that resonates with me. Diffused thinking is everything. And for me, diffused thinking actually happens mostly in the shower.
Yes.
In my whole life, I've always had the best insights into my life in the shower. And then my good friend who's on here now, who I work with, she brought me a shower, a waterproof notepad so I can have it in the shower.
Oh, I love that.
What I've been doing forever is I have like a pen or a Sharpie near the shower and I just write it on my hand. So often you'll see me with so many different ideas. Oh, and someone just asked, oh, Georgia just asked, what is diffused thinking? So there are two types of thinking. It came from a researcher in the aughts who had a paper on the difference between deep focus thinking, like, ooh, what cheese should I get for my cheese board, versus diffuse thinking, which is walking in the woods, saying to yourself intentionally, I'm just going to bring a playlist and not really think about anything right now, and look at the trees and look at your maybe even a friend, or it doesn't have to be alone. But the idea that you're not focused. Focus is the rigor. And today we're talking about diffused, and that's the dreaming. Yes. And then that's how you come to your dreaming. And I'm assuming, Georgia, you do a lot of diffused thinking because my friend Georgia is a poet and
nice.
A beautiful poet. But I think again, my diffused thinking is always, oh, yeah, she says that's how I write all of my poetry. Exactly. It just comes to you.
Yes.
It's almost like a lot of songwriters will say the song was already written and it was like dumped into their brain.
And that's also that toggling between wonder and rigor. The rigor is that focus, deep focus thinking, and the wonder is the diffuse. And we're not giving ourselves enough time. Even we're racing through the shower. We're not taking breaks to go for a walk.
That's
Same
right.
thing for me. It's in the shower. It's walking. When I was swimming more regularly, it was in the midst of a deep meditative swim, just doing laps. It's interesting how there's something, at least in my life, there's something about the kinesthetic movement that also helps to get into the diffused state as well.
Yeah, well, and I will say that last night I was just thinking about that because I like to write in acronyms, and I was thinking, that's how I start to write my talks in acronyms. And then I was thinking about organizations and what they're really missing right now. And I realized that I really like the term EAT. There's something, I don't know, like visceral about needing to eat. And I was thinking about empathy, accountability, and trust.
Nice.
And how many organizations are missing that from their leadership. So again, random acronym came just like last night when I was walking around.
Well, let's end on that. That's a great example of coming out of a dream state and Eve's acronym of EAT and what our working lives need now. I love that. You said empathy, accountability.
Yeah, accountability and authenticity. There was 2 A's.
There were 2 A's, and trust. So guys, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to come back to this again next Wednesday, March 24th at...
I'm just going to show your book one more time because like I said,
thank you. It
was really one of the best books I've ever read. And it's so short, which is great, I think, for women, right? Because we're especially so busy right now. But like I said, what was so helpful to me is there's so much prescriptive exercise in it. And so I encourage everybody to read it and to foster your creativity and level up in your creativity.
Thank you, Eve. Thank you. And got to read Fair Play as well. Fair Play is actually going to be a great reference point for our conversation next Wednesday, March 24th, 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. Check the link in my bio if you want some Wonder Rigor tips. I have a Wonder Rigor tip sheet. And Eve, it was awesome to see your beautiful face. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And keep wondering, keep dreaming, and see you next Wednesday.
I love the what if. And if you have any hurdles, we came up with a new term today. I feel like we should do
let's do that joint article or something. Let's do that.
Yeah. Done.
Okay. Bye. Thanks, guys.